Why? Why? Fuck! 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 Oh!
No! God, please, no! No!
Welcome back to Torn Apart, and as usual we're here to talk about a new project that is coming out of the MCU. It's on Disney Plus, and guess what? Daredevil is back, Kingpin is back as well, and maybe the Punisher as well in the next few episodes. There is a lot of things that we need to talk about. I feel like before we jump in immediately and talk about the new season, we have to catch things up, because there aren't that many people who are actually as engaged with the Daredevil Netflix series as I am, because I'm a huge Daredevil fan. I literally have a Daredevil tattoo like right here. I love the Born Again like storyline, so I kind of kept up with it, and I was nitpicking every single new cameo that they allowed him to do since basically the announcement that Charlie Cox Daredevil was gonna be coming back in the current MCU. So where are we at? Let's not talk about season 1 and 2 because there will be way too much to discuss, but let's talk about season 3 and what came after. So at the end of the Defenders, basically Matt Murdock is fighting Elektra underneath New York, and there is something collapsing, and basically he dies allegedly because he's actually rescued by some nuns at a church, and we get to recreate this incredibly fun comic book panel which I'm a huge fan of. And after that we jump right into season 3, where basically he's trying to recover physically and mentally from everything that happened in the season of Defenders, which I'm not a huge fan of, by the way. I want to say that I'm a bit skeptical when it comes to the Daredevil franchise, depending on how every single storyline has been adapted. For me, season 1 and 2 have been great. Season 3 was definitely an improvement on all of those things, and the Defenders was a mishmash of mediocre to some good stuff, but never actually as good as the other standalone series that Netflix produced. But if we talk again about season 3, we've got Fisk, who manages to manipulate the FBI to gain house arrest instead of prison, and he secretly rebuilds his criminal empire from the inside. We get to see a new character come into the play, which is called Benjamin Dex Poindexter, who initially he works for the FBI, and he's basically manipulated by Kingpin to become a supervillain, and he starts wearing Daredevil's suit and basically tainting the name of Daredevil and creating a huge mess for him. Across the final episodes, we've got Matt, who is fighting Fisk and Dex is actually critically injured when Fisk turns on him, and Matt nearly kills Fisk but ultimately spares him, forcing him to return to prison under the threat of exposing his wife Vanessa as an accomplice. And by the end of the show, we've got Matt reconciling with his best friends, going out for coffee, and this is actually something that links straight back to the first episode of Born Again, where it actually almost feels like it's a direct sequel to exactly what happened in that season finale that ended, I think, in 2018 if I'm not mistaken. That was not the last time that we saw Daredevil, because he comes back for a couple of cameos. Let's rethink about those and judge them as harshly as possible, because they were not really that useful when you think about it. We've got Matt coming back in Spider-Man No Way Home, and he acts basically as Peter Parker's lawyer after Peter's identity is exposed, and he's a bit of a joke there. He doesn't really add anything that we know. It just feels like, here, this guy exists in the universe. Did you know that? Well, we approve of it and we listen to the fans. This is exactly what this cameo was for. There was no actual more character development or kind of like increasing the lore of Daredevil. It was just fan service, like most of the things that were done in that movie at the end of the day. We've got a small appearance in She-Hulk Attorney at Law in 2022, where Matt appears in episode 8 and they fight basically, first of all, each other, and then they fight together against another villainous creature called Leapfrog, and they actually have a bit of a romantic fling going on, and there is that infamous shot of him like walking around in his like Daredevil yellow suit, not wearing any shoes, and basically doing that kind of walk of shame thing. A lot of people like criticize this like portrayal of Daredevil, but it's actually one of the most fun things that they've done when I look back on it. If you just look at how the character has always been represented, I feel like Daredevil is one of the only characters who keeps, well, at least being interested by women and getting in relationships characters and actually trying to create something romantically or intimately involved with them, while most of the MCU characters, like, it doesn't really feel realistic. So it's something that I appreciate that they adapted quite well, and I thought that they had really good chemistry, him and She-Hulk, of course. So at least this felt completely necessary because She-Hulk is also an attorney, so it makes sense they would actually interact with each other and know each other. And the fact that they interact as Matt Murdock and Daredevil is of course even more interesting. And then we've got another small appearance in episode 3 in 2024 in the show Echo, where basically we see in a flashback where he's fighting Maya Lopez, aka Echo. This actually happens before Okai, and honestly I think this is probably the best like stunt choreography that they've done since, well, the original series, because we haven't really seen him fight that much. But just the pairing of him being blind and having superpowers and her being deaf, I don't know, I just feel like the two things match together wonderfully, and that scene actually portrayed Daredevil as more of a villainous figure instead of the hero of that story, because we were seeing that story through the perspective of Maya Lopez. So it was an interesting change of point of view, which made it feel very, very fresh at the end of the day. So you're caught up. This is basically everything that we've seen Daredevil related within the MCU. I think he's the only one who has made a reappearance, even though we've seen the trailer that the Punisher is coming back. So what happens now? We've got 2 episodes that have been released, and we've got 9 episodes in total, which for me is already a really, really good start. I feel like structure-wise, we can all agree about this. 13 episodes has always been way too long for Netflix. Honestly, like, they cannot handle the pacing. I feel like it was the second half of the second season which like struggled quite a lot with its pacing, especially with the Elektra kind of storyline. And we all agreed that it was just not even like too many bottle episodes. It's just that it didn't need those episodes to tell the story with the kind of ambition that they wanted to apply to it. So 9 episodes, I feel like this is gonna be perfect television, and it's actually already been greenlit for a second season, which is gonna have 8 episodes. Once again, I think it's good. This is probably the first time ever where for a Disney Plus series I'm saying that such a short amount of episodes is gonna be good for the story overall. Who actually created this series? Let's have a look. It was created by Dario Scardapane, who is working with Matt Corman and Chris Ord, and we've got Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead as the lead directors for most of the episodes. They've worked on a lot of really fun indie sci-fi movies like The Endless and Synchronic, so I really feel like the direction is gonna be quite consistent and very interesting because they actually know their shit when it comes to mixing different genres and working with a different pace as well from episode to episode. When it comes to the showrunner himself, as a writer, he's worked on quite a lot of like political thrillers, so you can already tell that he's gonna be good when it comes to adapting the lawyer stuff of Daredevil. And he's also worked as executive producer and writer on the 2 seasons of The Punisher, which is a good thing. It means he's worked with Disney/Marvel before, and he knows how to get things done efficiently while at the same time have a coherent storyline that is actually quite ambitious, because he kept saying, for example, in different interviews that he wants this series to be even darker than the original, and you can see that for certain things. But one of the main critiques for the first 2 episodes, for example, is that it's kind of like trying to look a bit too much like the Netflix show, and it's not really trying to create its own identity. And it really feels like we got a lot of exec notes coming to the showrunner, to the writers and the directors, to make it look like other things that have worked in the past. For example, like I saw a lot of different parallels with The Bear, especially when it comes to the transition shots. There are so many transition shots in the first 2 episodes of just random like New York vibey kind of stock footage shots to move us from one scene to the next, as if this was some kind of weird sitcom from the 90s. Like, honestly, I actually rewatched the 2 episodes twice because I wanted to see if I actually could see anything more to say about them. But what I noticed is actually that the pacing was definitely a bit off, and there needs to be a little bit more fighting. I think if there is something that I could learn from the Netflix series is that, well, you can't not really rehash the structure of Matt Murdock / Daredevil not wanting to be Daredevil anymore and drag that for as long as possible, to the point that you almost have no action sequences anymore, especially when you're building a series with a Kingpin who doesn't want to do crime stuff anymore. He wants to be just a corrupt politician and kind of try to change New York in a different way, because he feels like what he's done in the past has not really worked out. So if Kingpin is not doing any crime, if the part that Vanessa is actually handling, we don't really see it on screen, and Daredevil doesn't want to fight anyone, who do we get to see actually do some action, right? We can't just look at people talk to each other constantly for hour-long episodes. So I hope that the pacing is going to change a little bit in the next few episodes, but if the Punisher is involved, I'm pretty sure that it's going to change. If we talk about the storyline of the first two episodes, the first one is 100% a mishmash of trying to basically recapture the magic of the Netflix series. We're trying to mix everything together with the MCU and the things that we know about Kingpin, because he's been quite present within other shows. For example, he's been seen in Aoki with a cameo that is completely useless, which actually kind of destroyed the character a little bit, because he felt very pathetic, and they keep addressing the fact that he got shot in the eye by a vigilante, even though it's impossible for him to have recovered so quickly and so well as well. So I really don't understand why they decided to go with that. Maybe they didn't want to use Kingpin anymore and they wanted to recast that character. We don't really know exactly. And then we saw him once again in Echo, and in a post-credit scene in Echo as well, where basically he found out that he wants to go into politics because there is a power vacuum in New York right now. So basically this first episode is catching us up to speed with where Matt Murdock, Karen Page and Foggy are with their lives, and tying up some loose ends with the villains from the previous season. For example, we get that shocking scene with Bullseye coming and kind of killing a lot of people, and at the end of the day killing Foggy as well, which was a very good moment of TV. And the fact that they delayed the theme song for such a long time was such a powerful gut punch that honestly they had to do it. They had to come back as big and loud as possible, because people have been expecting this to be bad. People have been expecting this to be like a Disney-fied, very diluted version of what we know as Daredevil, but it actually wasn't. Some of the action sequences are very bloody, very gory, and they feel real. One thing that I can criticize when it comes to the first episode, of course, is the fact that they try to hide a lot of the, maybe the choreography was not really well executed, or maybe the sets were not ready. There is a lot of fog, there is a lot of smoke around, which hides most of the interesting part of this fight, because Bullseye is a guy who basically is gonna use anything that he can see around him and throw it at our main character Daredevil and the people around him as well. There is a scene, for example, where he gets this bow and he throws it around, bouncing around the walls, and he hits one of the side extras who falls in Daredevil's arms. But I could see that just because of the sound effects, not because I saw that cool throw that he actually did. And it's a bit of a shame, because this is a character who can do incredibly cool stuff when it comes to his aim, and we don't get to see it. We get to barely hear it, and you have to squint to see actually how it's going on, right? A lot of wonky CGI as well. The kind of scenes where he's jumping from rooftops and using his weird boomerang to do that kind of slingshot as well. You could really tell that it was a lot of CGI. I don't know, take the time to actually do it practically. It would be way more interesting, and that's what we loved about Daredevil, the original series as well. And that's something that really feels better in the other action sequences that we get at the end of the second episode. The second episode actually feels like a normal Daredevil episode. We're done with catching up all of the things that we needed to. We're done when it comes to putting Matt Murdock versus Kingpin together in a room and just talking to each other, which is a scene that exists, I suppose, and you've seen the trailers, and there is nothing else to add, because they don't actually say anything to each other. They just catch up to speed, basically, with things that have happened across seasons that we have never seen. And I don't know, it felt a bit clunky because of that. And there are some things that are introduced as new, which it really feels like they shouldn't be there, and they're not going to be well exploited. It really feels like it's trying to maybe attract a new audience. The BB segments, for example, they're basically done by Ben Urich's niece, who is a journalist who is making this weird YouTube podcast series about New York, where he interviews people about the different crime rate, and it felt so cringy. It felt like someone who didn't really understand what Gen Z was about, and they were just trying to portray it because they saw a TikTok once. Like, that's actually what it felt like. And there is a lot of B&B segments which are all very redundant, and they kind of service nothing at the end of the day, because they actually work as transition shots once again from one scene to the other, like they do with the random shots of the underground or of streets or street lights. It's very stock footage-y at the end of the day, and it's the same thing with the B&B reports. There's a moment, for example, where like literally she asks, so what do you think about the crime rate in New York? And this lady is just like, well, you know, since Daredevil is no longer here, it's been a bit bad. And I'm like, that's not the question. She asked you what the crime rate is, what your personal experience is with the New York crime rate. Who would ever think about Daredevil immediately? It's not like he's the actual police who everyone has seen and he's appeared on TV like constantly. He's not like Iron Man, as in he's supposed to work from the shadows, a little bit like Batman. So it feels weird for someone like in broad daylight to just mention him without being asked about him. Honestly, as a transition episode that is trying to bridge links between different things that have nothing to do with each other, it was serviceable. I don't know why, but they completely basically deleted Karen Page from this entire season. That's what it feels like. It felt like she was there to bridge the gap in between the original and the reboot, which is happening right now, the requel technically, and then it feels like she's not gonna be around anymore, which is a bit weird. I'm like, why are you doing this again? Why are you like creating a rift in between Matt Murdock and Karen Page, which is something that was already developed for like 3 full seasons, and just don't do it. Like, do something new. Or maybe you could even tell that Karen is just moved on to a different city. You don't need to have that entire like weird tragic dynamic about them being made for each other but not being at the perfect time together. Like, if it's fucked up. Honestly, it's so incredibly boring and I don't want to see it anymore. So this is also why it's kind of interesting that I introduced a new love interest in the end of the first episode, and then it actually gets confirmed in the second episode, because we get a breath of fresh air at the end of the day. And the second episode actually felt like a real Daredevil story, where he's actually defending a character who's done something that some people are saying that it's bad, and some people are saying no, actually the facts don't actually confirm the story that you're trying to portray when it comes to this person. And turns out that he's actually the White Tiger, who is a new vigilante who has been basically replacing Daredevil in the past year, because he was not there to help New Yorkers, and just someone had to fill that gap. And I don't know, it felt quite weird to introduce a new vigilante, for him to be caught almost immediately, and for him also to not be part of the story anymore, because there is no way that he's gonna like not do any prison time, or there is not gonna be killed by a corrupt policeman or something like that. Talking about corrupt policemen, I'm actually intrigued by this plot line here, and the fact that we're addressing the fact that there are some policemen who are actually wearing the Punisher like tattoo, which has been kind of like reclaimed by corrupt cops and alt-right cops as well. And that scene, like the end of season 2, that's the Netflix show Daredevil that I remember. As in, you could really tell that he doesn't want to do it. He made this promise that he doesn't want to commit to violence anymore. And it's also related to the fact that when you think about it, Foggy died because of him, because Poindexter was coming back to get revenge and to hurt Matt Murdock and Daredevil. And we also need to really applaud the performance, because he was really like fucked up. Honestly, like, he was there for such a few amount of minutes, but his presence was incredible, and he really anchored the series into something new and something exciting. I also like the fact that he tried to kill Poindexter, but he actually didn't succeed at the end of the day. This is the entire core of Daredevil versus Matt Murdock as like a duology, where he's trying to be good, but the city keeps forcing him to be bad. Basically, these people are pushing him around to the point that he knows that the justice system is not actually gonna do what he can do. So I'm glad that he is kept alive, for him to be judged and sent to prison, even though we know that he's not gonna stay in prison for that long, because he's a really good and interesting villain for Daredevil to fight as well. But it was a good like hit for him. I feel like it really proved to Matt Murdock that maybe Daredevil is not always the answer to everything, because this time around he actually managed to send him to prison, and he was not even representing like the public defense, for example. He was just there as a witness. This is what I want to see as well. Him basically trying to do his best, but never actually knowing what it means and where the lines are. And of course, Kingpin playing with those lines as well, where we see him also talking talking about the commissioner and how he's gonna get him on his side, because he realizes that he cannot do everything illegally, he cannot actually follow the law all the time to achieve the things that he wants to achieve in the time allocated. And I feel like this is a huge parallel with what Trump is doing in the US, where he's cutting in line and he's saying what people want to hear as well. And I feel like it's an interesting thing to do with Kingpin, and overall I think it's going to be an interesting storyline. I just hope that they're going to introduce Muse, which is another villain, as fast as possible, because of course to do once again a storyline where Kingpin is untouchable by Matt Murdock / Daredevil, it's something that we've done in season 3 already, so I want them to do something different, and I hope that they're going to do it, and I hope they're going to achieve it. I'm kind of mixed when it comes to this Daredevil 2 episodes. I really liked them, but at the same time there's a lot of things to fix, and I really hope that they're not going to spend 10 minutes every single episode with those weird ass transition shots which are completely useless. There is a friend of mine who also mentioned that we have a huge problem when it comes to the production design of this season here. She described it as IKEA furniture, but I almost saw it as like a Tumblr kind of aesthetic. If you look at the cafes, if you look at the restaurants, if you look at the bar scenes as well, there is a weird color palette, there is a weird like kind of like shallow focus as well, which makes everything look kind of cheap. It doesn't look very cinematic. It feels very empty, like most of the rooms feel empty. It feels like they don't have enough budget to make it look real. There are some scenes, for example, where we get to focus on Matt's superpowers and we get to zoom in on shots of shoes going in slow motion and like the frame basically narrowing down so that we know that he's using his super hearing. They do it so often, it almost feels like they're calling us stupid, because we know that he has that power. You don't need to show it to us every single time with these very convoluted and kind of like forced slow motion effects. I don't know, it almost felt like a joke at some point. I wasn't taking it seriously anymore. So I'm a bit mixed when it comes to these episodes. But what did you think about Daredevil? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What do you think? Did they insult the memory of the character, or are they doing it justice? You get to decide. But anyways, if you liked this video, here down at the bottom as usual, I'm gonna be putting other MCU things that I've talked about in the last few weeks / months, and here at the top it's gonna be the topic of the next video that is gonna be appearing on this channel. I actually don't know what it's gonna be about, because we have kind of surpassed the end of the year rush where the Oscars and the awards are coming in, so I actually get to breathe a little bit and choose some more indie / art house topics to talk about, or maybe even something fun like a new tier list video, because I haven't made any of those in a really long time. Having said that, don't forget to smash that like button. Every single time that you do that, you make sure that Matt Murdock gets a new love interest to fool around for a new season, a new episode.
Can I count on you?
I don't know, it feels very fun to think about Daredevil's body count at this point. He's definitely on Tinder most days. I don't know how Tinder works for blind people. I would actually love to know. If you're blind, if you use Tinder, let me know down in the comments how it works. But anyways, I'm Patrick, and this is Torn Apart.
Back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show.
Da 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 da.